follow me? This is the question that Jesus asks us. And we're going to dive into John chapter 1 when we see Jesus inviting his first disciples. And in particular, this morning, I'd like to talk about his invitation that he makes to Nathanael. Philip, his friend, calls Nathanael, and he's rushing over and he says, "We have found the one that we've been looking for, the Messiah. Let's go see him." And of course, Nathanael comes and he stands before Jesus, and Jesus says something quite peculiar. He says, "Here is a true Israelite, of one through which we see no duplicity or no guile." Okay? Usually when I meet people, I say, "Hi, how you doing? My name is Eric." You know, it's a little bit kind of off-putting to have someone come and say, "Hey, I know you. I can see through who you are. You have integrity. I can see, beyond just like your face." You know, I've had people come up and I've never met them before. Perhaps I forgot their names or their faces, and they say, "Hey, how's your kids? I saw that you guys were at the mountain the other day. Oh, that looked like a really good meal." And then I realized, how do you know me? And it was that they looked at my Instagram account and saw that they were kind of creeping and seeing all these things that we're up to. But of course, Jesus didn't have Instagram. He didn't need it. And he said this to them, and Nathanael was taken aback, and he asked that question, "Where did you come to know me? How did you know this about me?" And Jesus' response in that moment was, "Before Philip, I saw you under the fig tree. I saw you under the fig tree." Now, this is when we take these two moments of conversation that Jesus had with Nathanael. "I see you are a true Israelite, of which there is no duplicity, and I saw you under the fig tree." We recognize, we can kind of dig into and see that there could be more behind this statement than is at face value. What we see here is that Jesus is saying, "I can see into your heart, and I can see that what you're wrestling with in your heart, you're thinking about and you're expressing within your life." There is a particular quote that I love that I've heard and have used often, and it goes like this: "We do not see the world as it is, but as we are." Or we do not see things as it is, but as we are. And I found an old newspaper article. I'm going to get our team to put it up. And I love this sort of way of speaking to this phrase. And it says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And as a man sees in his heart, so he sees. Through unclean windows, lenses, senses, we see things not as they are, but as we are." We see things not as they are, but as we are. And I can imagine Nathanael sitting under that fig tree. I'm going to project a little bit of myself into Nathanael a little bit, and I can imagine him sitting under that fig tree asking the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to be? Who am I meant to be? And Jesus saw that, and he said, "I see you." And he looks to each and every one of you, and he recognizes that each and every one of you have these questions in your heart. Who am I meant to be? Who am I? But again, we don't see things as they are, but as we are. And this is an important recognition and understanding that in the way that we live, in the experiences that we have, in the relationships that we have, we begin to start forming our identity based on those relationships and based on those interests and based on the types of the ways we've grown up. And it can begin to form not only the way we see the world, but the way we see God. So in a sense, we might begin to say, we do not see God as he is, but as we are. And that diminishes and closes off the greatness, the bigness, the beauty of who God is. Imagine that. Imagine going through life, trying hard to impress your parents, or trying hard to achieve something, whether it's making the hockey team or making friends, and getting rejected, and then beginning to believe that I don't have what it takes. I don't have what it takes to succeed. I don't have what it takes, to make that hockey team. Or that you do succeed and recognize the praise that you receive from it and begin to think, people only see me when I do good things. And we might project that and see that in God. That he's not going to come through for us, and that he might not be able to do what we ask him to do. So we might, in this moment, think, we only see God as we are, but not as he is. But there's something in us that wants more than that. There's something in us as we are sitting under that fig tree, about to encounter Jesus, and we find ourselves in that place where we're wondering, could this be the answer to all of my questions? And can I get past my own questions and my own insecurities to be able to receive what Jesus is saying? That he sees me. Could I get there? I'm going to ask the team to put up a quote for me. It's the John Paul II quote. It is Jesus, in fact, that you seek when you dream of happiness. He is waiting for you when nothing else you find satisfies you. He is the beauty to which you are so attracted. It is he who provokes you with that thirst for fullness that will not let you settle for compromise. It is he who urges you to shed the masks of a false life. It is he who reads in your hearts your most genuine choices, the choices that others try to stifle. This resonates for me because growing up, that was how I lived. I began to wear masks because I didn't want people to see me as I was. So how it worked was I wanted to make sure that I impressed my parents, and I did well in school, and I took care of whatever they expected me to be. But at school, I wanted to make sure that I was popular, that I had friends, that I didn't stick out, that I tried to avoid being bullied. And so I began to get good at living and working through wearing these masks with whoever I was in front of. And I took this to my university days where as Michelle mentioned, I did an engineering degree. I didn't actually really like it. I just did it because I found it was the hardest program, and I wanted to show everyone that I can get into the hardest program. And I could stay there. That was the mask that I wanted to keep on in front of me. I didn't want to show people, who I really was. So my weekends looked like this. I would go out with my friends, drink, drugs, whatever our friends took us to. I'd roll out of bed, go to school, study all day, go back to partying, stay up all night, and then Sunday morning roll out of bed and go to mass with my parents. And eventually I got really tired of wearing these masks because it wasn't fulfilling what was in my heart. In that John Paul II statement, it speaks of these false masks, and this is what I wore. And I allowed other people to speak into my life and speak into how I began to live. There was an invitation that was made to me. Just as Philip invited Nathaniel, I was invited. I was invited to something of a conference sort of like this, but it was much smaller. It was more like 100 people. It was in Vancouver. And I didn't want to go, and I didn't know why I was going, but I said yes. I said yes to going. And so, I woke up that morning, and I remember specifically thinking, I'm going to be a little bit late so that I can kind of sneak in at the back of the room and just kind of, pretend to be there because I didn't necessarily want to be there. So I did that, and I walked into the room. And as I walked into the room, the first thing I noticed was a girl on the other side of the room. a pretty girl. And I thought, I got to go meet her. I got to find a way to go meet her. And so I was in the room, and I was, coming in through one of the doors. So you can imagine coming in through those doors, and the girl was like on the other side, and I saw her across the room. And I thought, how am I going to do this? So I began to sit at each of the tables, kind of talk to the people, pretend like, oh yeah, I knew people. And then I moved over to the next table, and I began to talk to people there. And eventually I made my way over to that table, and I sat down, and I started talking to the girl, and I was just thinking, man, she is so pretty. And internally I was thinking, which mask am I going to put on that's going to allow for me to get her number, because I wanted to get to know her. And eventually, I started kind of doing these things like mask, and nothing was working. Nothing was working. I couldn't get anything. I couldn't get anywhere. And the way she spoke to me was so different from all of the other girls that I had spoken to. She had this sort of joy, and she spoke about this Jesus that she loved so personally, and I had no idea what that meant, because my faith and my relationship with Jesus was a mask that I would put on Sunday mornings. And so I'm thinking in this moment, what am I going to do? How am I going to impress this girl? So eventually this conference was invited into the church to pray. And I had this brilliant idea to walk in front of her, to go into the church before her, and to get on my knees and pray in the front row where she could see me, so that she could be impressed by the fact that I also love Jesus like she did. Okay? Kind of crazy, right? So I did that, and I ended up in the front row, and I knelt down, and I was pretending to pray, and I was thinking, okay, what's my posture? Okay, hands together, head down, one eye slightly open, just to look and see if she's like actually looking at me and impressed by me, okay? Why am I doing this? Why? I don't know where she was. I did not see her come into the room. I actually, in that moment, got sick of what I was trying to be, of who I was trying to be. I got tired of it. And so in that moment, I kind of, in the moment, I probably didn't use the word masks. It's been something that I've been thinking about and reflecting on. I took all of those masks, and I kind of just laid them aside. Okay? And there was a crucifix just like this one. And I looked up, and I began to pray. And I began to pray from my heart. And in that moment, God came into my life like no other. It was a real personal encounter with Jesus. And I realized at that very moment that he was real, that I didn't have to wear masks, that he could change the course of my life if I let him in. And I prayed for that. And I stayed there. And I don't know what happened to the girl. And I don't know what happened to the rest of that day, because ultimately it became as if I was the only one in the room with Jesus, and he was the only one there for me. It was a beautiful encounter, and it changed the course of the way I saw things. I began to not see things I began to not see things as I was, but to see things as they were, in light of Jesus, in light of who he was, who he is for me. And I began to recognize that in that encounter that I can have with Jesus, that he also saw me. He saw who I was. He saw me in my identity. And he understood that in my life, I've had relationships that have broken my heart and have caused me to disbelieve and doubt his goodness. I dated girls that didn't necessarily care too much for me, and so I began to date more girls, and I began to kind of seek some sort of a fulfillment in that. I liked being popular. I liked being successful. And I began to allow that to be my primary identity. But what happened when I failed? What happened when the girls dumped me? What happened when they cheated on me? What happened when all of these things that I'd begun to lay down as the foundation of my identity, what happens when that gets pulled out from under me? I'm left wanting. I'm left thirsty. I'm left looking for that goodness that I was so earnestly desiring. And Jesus was that water of life, that fulfillment that filled my heart. So Jesus comes and he redeems that place where we are in our hearts. So now Nathanael in that moment says, "How do you know me?" And of course, Jesus says, "I saw you under the fig tree." And Nathanael in that moment is thinking, he understands me and he understands where I'm coming from. But Jesus also makes an invitation. Will you come and follow me? He's making an invitation to be to Nathanael to become a disciple. Now, Philip, Nathanael, Andrew, Peter, all of his first disciples would have recognized this invitation to be a disciple. Because as a Jewish boy in that time, they would have had to have spent a good deal amount of time studying the law, the scriptures, and would have been tested by the rabbis, the teachers in that time. And they would have been filtered out. They would have been, the teachers would have looked among the boys and said, who among you can be a teacher? Who among you can be a rabbi? Who's good enough to be my disciple? And so they would look among the boys and they would find the very best of them and they would point them out and they would say, I see you, come after me and be my disciple. The rest of you, you go do other things. The rest of you go fishing, you take on other careers, but you will be my disciple. I will teach you to become a rabbi. Nathanael was not a rabbi. He was not a teacher. He was rejected. He was not the best. Jesus saw that, and he still said, I see you. I see you under the fig tree. Now come follow me. Nathanael in that moment would have understood, Jesus' invitation in that moment to become a disciple. It meant give everything up and follow me. It meant following and taking on the life of Jesus. It was a radical invitation. It wasn't just, be my friend. Come and follow me meant take my life. And it was, again, like I said, Nathanael being in that moment and wondering, I'm not perfect. I don't know what I'm up like. I don't know why you would pick me, and yet you are picking me. What are you trying to show me? What kind of life do you want from me? What does it mean to be a disciple of Jesus? Why would I want to become a disciple of Jesus? What does Jesus show us? Jesus shows us how we can be a child of God. He shows us how we can relate to God our Father. He shows us the way in which we can become a child of God. He gives to us the truth about our created being, and he gives us life. We have these experiences in our lives that mark and create the world through which we see everything. And that quote that I showed before that said that, through cloudy windows, lenses, senses, we begin to see not as it is, but as we are. Through our experiences, we began to see things not as it is, but as we are. We don't get to see God for who he is, but as we are through our experiences, and we project that on him. He can't actually, he couldn't think that I'm beautiful. He couldn't actually be dependable. He couldn't actually be reliable. What I've come to understand in my encounter with Jesus, my relationship with him, is that he actually can be. And that when we are looking to satiate our thirst, and we are looking to fill the voids in our hearts, when we go to other things, they're just not going to, it's not going to just do. Because it's not what we were created for. Here's what it says in the Catechism, paragraph 1. God, infinitely perfect and blessed in himself, in a plan of sheer goodness, created man to make him share in his own blessed life. This was why we were created. In a plan of sheer goodness, with no other motive, God created us so that we could share in that goodness. It goes on to say, in his Son and through him, he invites men to become in the Holy Spirit his adopted children and thus heirs of his blessed life. So when we reach and grasp and look for all the things that the world has to offer in order to satiate the longings in our heart, it will always come up short. It will never fulfill. It will never fill our thirst. But when we recognize and we become who we were created to be as children of God, and we receive our blessing and we receive the fulfillment from the God who created us, it will always fulfill. This is just a random thought. I don't know if panda bears can swim, okay? But if they can't, and you threw them in the water, they'd probably just kind of either drown or try to swim or get themselves kind of, in a bit of a tizzy, and they'd be, pretty out of their element. Because they were not meant to swim. We were not meant to fill our hearts with the things of the world. We were not meant to find fulfillment in other things other than God. We were meant to be children of God. And these messages that continue to sow seeds of lies around this are all around us. They're all around us. Okay? I have 5 kids. And when my eldest was really young, I remember this clearly. She was in the back seat. We were driving. And I don't know where she got this, but she said, "Daddy, I'm not beautiful." And I slammed on the brakes, and I caused a 4-car accident. I did not, but I wanted to. Because who told her that? Who told her that she was not beautiful? It wasn't me. I don't know where she got it. But at a very early age, we begin to believe these lies about who we are. And so a good mentor helped me adopt a particular process. And I call this process, it's sort of a communication piece with my kids. I call it sharing beautiful truths into their lives. And I do this with a whisper. I show a picture. It's me and another one of my daughters. And as often as I can, mostly at night, I pick them up and I hold them close and I begin to whisper into their ears beautiful truths, because I'm very much aware, and we should be aware of the fact that lies can begin to seep into our hearts, and it begins to change the way in which we see God and the world and ourselves. You are beautiful. You are loved. You are good. You are created by a loving God. I am so proud of you. I saw what you did for your sisters. I saw that you were trying. I know you make mistakes. You will always be forgiven. These kids, they never tire of it. In fact, they ask for it. They ask for these beautiful truths. And whenever they ask for it and I give it to them, it's kind of crazy. No matter what's going on in our day, no matter what's happened with the kids, sometimes they're clenched up, they've been fighting, and we take a moment and I say, all right, it's time for beautiful truths. The shoulders drop. And they just kind of lean in, and their hands go up like little children's hands do, and I pick them up and I get a chance to whisper into their ears. And I'm not sharing this to kind of like toot my own horn, because I really like the fact that I get to do this, and the kids really like it. I actually keep this picture, I don't know where it went, but I keep that picture on my desk, not as a reminder for me to be a good father, but as a reminder to me that the Father has beautiful truths for us. He wants to speak these words to us. And he does it through his son Jesus, in the very person of Jesus. And he does it through his scriptures. You were wonderfully made. See what love that the Father has, that we would be called children of God, and that is what we are. I have a plan for you. It's a plan that is good. These are the truths that we need to hear. These beautiful truths. We need them to well into our hearts so as to fulfill and to recognize that we are, in fact, children of God. But what happened? The next quote, I think, is from the Catechism. Man, tempted by the devil, let his trust in his Creator die in his heart, and abusing his freedom, disobeyed God's command. This is what man's first sin consisted of. All subsequent sin would be disobedient toward God and lack of trust in his goodness. Can we trust in his goodness? Can we trust in his goodness? I want to share another story of one of my other girls, because it kind of speaks again to this trust and goodness. And it helps, I hope it'll help perhaps us see the shift in which we have to recognize God's goodness and his desire for us to be children. Okay? And so at our dinner table, we have to get all our kids doing chores. Okay? There's so many of them. We got so much food. It's a bit of a frenzy at dinner time. Everyone's trying to fight for what's on the plates. And at the end of it, they all have their jobs to do. And if they don't do their jobs, they don't get dessert. Something like that. Okay? So one of my kids decides to not do their chores. And so she doesn't get dessert. And so she comes to me and she looks up and she kind of does, those puppy dog eyes with the, I don't know how they do it, but they dilate them so big and they look at you and she just kind of pauses and looks and she says, "Daddy, you broke my heart because you took away my dessert." Heartbreak. So this is what I say back. You broke your own heart because you didn't do your chores. And then she looks at me and she's stunned because it's true, right? It's true. She didn't do her chores. She lost dessert. And then I said, "But I'm going to do your chores right now and you can have dessert." This is both justice and mercy. The mercy of our Father says to us, the justice of our Father says to us, yeah, we've broken our relationship, and thus there is a consequence. I didn't do it. You did it. But I'm going to help make reparation. I'm going to send my son Jesus. I'm going to let him teach you how to become a child. I'm going to allow him to be the way in which you can receive your sonship, your daughtership. This is the choice that we have to make. Will you become Jesus' disciple? So as to allow your heart to begin to grow in trustworthiness, in trusting of a Father who is good to us, who speaks beautiful truths into our lives, so that we can receive the blessing through which we were created for. Can we do that? Do you want it? Do you really want it? Do you want to be a child of God? Do you want to receive the truths, the beautiful truths about who you are? Do you want to get rid of the lies through which you might be living by? Do you want to get rid of the doubts? Do you want to get rid of the things that have never fulfilled you, that have left you empty, that have left you wanting for more? That's really good. It's true. I know it's brunch, but I want to do something with you. I want to share a couple more quotes, and then I want to show a clip, and then I want to pray, if that's okay with you. Okay? Let's go to the JP2 quote. To be truly free means having the strength to choose the one for whom we were created and accepting his lordship over our lives. You perceive it in the depths of your heart. all that is good on earth, all professional success, even the human love that you dream of can never fully satisfy the deepest and most intimate desires. Only an encounter with Jesus can give full meaning to your life. For you made us for yourself, and our heart finds no peace until it rests in you. Do not let yourselves be distracted from this search. Persevere in it, because it is your fulfillment and your joy that is at stake. And as we close our session, I want to invite you to pray with me. And I'm going to pray a number of different prayers. And I don't want you to kind of say, yeah, I'm going to put my hands up because Eric said so, and I'm just going to pray with everyone else, okay? If what I pray expresses the desire of your heart, then agree with it in your heart and make it your prayer. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But my invitation to you is to take your hands and to reach up and to recognize that you are a child of God. This is your primary identity. This is for what we were created to be, and that the Father has so much to give to you, so much beauty, so much truth, and so much goodness. And if you choose to respond, as Philip and Nathanael did, to Jesus saying, I see you and I want you to be my disciple, if you choose to give your life to Jesus, I promise you the Father's goodness will pour over you. So let's do this now. I invite you now to, you can bow your heads, you can close your eyes, whatever you feel comfortable with. So, and I'm going to invite you to put your hands up as children. Heavenly Father, we come to you now as children, and our hands are raised, waiting for you to pick us up. And we are done with being too little, of feeling unworthy. We are done with not knowing you. We are done with seeking fulfillment in places that will never fill our hearts. We are done with false masks. We are done with living a life of duplicity. We are done with keeping one foot in the door and one foot out of the door. We are done. We are done with this littleness. And I want what you promised to me. I want to receive your goodness. I want to be a disciple of Jesus. I want to follow you with all my heart. I want to be a little child. I want to receive the truths that you have for me. I want to know that I am beautiful. I want to know that I am great in your eyes. I want to receive the great love, and I want to expect more than I can expect from myself. I want your Holy Spirit. This is our prayer as children, because we have a Father who wants to hear us, and he wants to pick us up, and he wants to embrace us. Holy Spirit, we invite you to come now and to dwell in our hearts and allow these prayers to make a home. Let us put our guard down. Let us receive the trustworthiness that you promised to us. For you are a good and trusting God. Amen.